Imagine walking up to a podium to accept one of the most prestigious high society music awards in your entire country.
Oh, wow. Okay, painting a picture.
Right. I mean, the room is just filled with people in, tailored suits and expensive dresses, and they're all sitting there waiting for this profound, deeply artistic acceptance speech.
Yeah, the classic polished industry moment.
Exactly. But you are walking up there to accept this massive honor for an album featuring songs about dwarf porn actors, giant hot dogs, and recycled cigarettes.
It is just, I mean, it's the ultimate subversion of expectations, isn't it?
It really is.
You have this incredibly polished industry recognizing something that is actively, almost aggressively trying to be unpolished.
Spot on. So we're looking at a really fascinating piece today. It's a comprehensive music column from Monumental Movement Records.
Awesome source.
Yeah. And the subject of today's deep dive is the history of a Quebec rock band called Gros Mené.
Such a wild story.
It really is. So our mission for this deep dive is to figure out how this band intentionally rejected, like, every single rule of refinement. They made their music sound deliberately dirty, they disappeared for over a decade, and somehow they still managed to create a legendary cultural touchstone.
And to really understand the magnitude of what they pulled off, we have to talk about the cultural geography of Quebec back in the late 1990s.
Oh, definitely. Set the stage for us.
Because this isn't just a story about a band. It's a story about a massive cultural divide. At the time, if you look at Montreal, the urban indie rock scene was heavily focused on refinement.
Right.
Montreal is very cosmopolitan. So the music coming out of there was, it was heartful, poetic, and really globally palatable.
Right, very sophisticated. But if you drive a few hours north into the Lac-Saint-Jean region, you hit a totally different reality.
Completely different.
Because, I mean, for anyone unfamiliar with the area, Lac-Saint-Jean is absolutely not Montreal. We are talking about a region historically built around, lumber, agriculture, and aluminum smelting.
Yeah, it's deeply rural.
Deeply rural, very working class, and culturally self-contained.
Precisely. And in that specific environment, an entirely different kind of musical rebellion was brewing.
It wasn't trying to be polite, right?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
And it certainly wasn't trying to sound European or cosmopolitan. It was noisy, it was rural, and it was totally unapologetic about its blue-collar roots.
And right in the middle of that brewing rural rebellion, around 1998 or so, a guy named Fred Fortin gets together with Olivier Langevin, Michel Dufour, and Pierre Bouchard.
And they formed Gros Mené.
Exactly. And you know immediately that they are just thumbing their noses at that serious, poetic Montreal rock scene just based on the name they chose.
Oh, the name is brilliant.
Right. In French, Mené is a minnow, like a tiny, insignificant little bait fish. And gros means giant. So they literally name themselves the giant minnow.
It's a wonking contradiction.
Completely.
But it perfectly captures their philosophy. They aren't trying to present themselves as like majestic eagles or lions of the music industry.
No, they are the giant bait fish.
Exactly. And that attitude, that total rejection of taking themselves too seriously, it bled directly into how they recorded their music.
Okay, let's unpack this, because in 1999, they released their debut album, which is called Tu se drum Pierre Bouchard.
Yes.
And they don't go into some sleek, multi-million-dollar studio in Montreal with, acoustic paneling and fancy espresso machines.
Definitely no espresso machine.
No. They literally go into a wooden chalet, a cabin in the woods in Saint Félicien. And this ends up being the very first release for the La Tribu label.
Which is kind of wild, considering La Tribu goes on to become this major, really important indie label in Quebec.
Yeah, it's a huge deal. But we have to talk about that album title, Tu se drum Pierre Bouchard.
Right, which translates roughly to Kill That Drum, Pierre Bouchard.
That just sounds like an inside joke shouted across a crowded, sweaty room, doesn't it?
Which it essentially is.
Yeah.
Because what's fascinating here is that the funniest part of this entire debut is about Pierre Bouchard, the drummer.
The guy they are commanding to kill the drum in the title.
Exactly. He doesn't even play on all the tracks.
Wait, really?
Yeah. They named the entire record after him destroying the drum kit, and he isn't even universally present on the album.
That is hilarious. That tells you everything you need to know about their creative priorities right there.
It really does. It was about capturing the camaraderie, the inside joke, and just the physical feeling of the room, rather than, objective clinical accuracy.
Right, the vibe over the technique.
Exactly. When you press play on that 1999 record, the sound hits you like a physical object. It is just a wall of distorted guitars.
A total wall of sound.
Yeah. And the drums sound like they are literally being crushed under the microphones. Plus, the vocals are delivered in these incredibly thick blue-collar Quebec regional accents.
Okay, we'll pause on that sound for a second because I really want to understand the mechanics of why this works so well. I mean, I have an analogy for this. It's like serving a messy, greasy diner burger in a fine dining restaurant and having all the food critics agree it's the best meal they've ever had.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. Why did people crave this aggressively messy musical junk food?
Because it wasn't just sloppy playing for the sake of being sloppy. It was a highly calculated cultural rebellion.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, for a very long time, there was this unspoken rule, a massive amount of cultural pressure, really, that if you were going to make French rock music in North America, it needed to be polite.
To sort of prove its worth.
Exactly. It needed to be refined and sophisticated to justify its existence next to the massive, dominant English-speaking market.
And Gros Mené just shattered that rule.
Completely shattered it. They proved you could use the specific, rural, regional accents and the tavern humor of Lac Saint-Jean, blast it through a wall of fuzz pedals, and still create world-class art.
Wait, let's break down the wall of fuzz pedals thing for a second.
Oh yeah, the gear.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people just hear the word distortion and think it just means turning the volume up until it sounds bad. But there is an actual science to why fuzz makes you feel a certain way, right?
Absolutely. There's a lot of physics behind it.
Mm-hmm.
When a guitar signal goes into a fuzz pedal, the pedal isn't just making it louder.
Right.
It is literally taking the smooth, rolling waveform of the guitar string, which is a sine wave, and violently chopping off the top and bottom of it. It turns it into a square wave.
A square wave, wow. So what does that actually do to the speaker?
Mechanically, it forces the speaker cone to jerk back and forth aggressively instead of moving smoothly.
So it's a completely different physical movement in the room.
Exactly. That physical chaos creates a visceral bodily reaction in the listener. It sounds thick, warm, and, frankly, inherently dangerous.
That makes so much sense. Gros Mené took the dirty rock aesthetic that was happening globally with grunge and stoner rock.
Yeah, but instead of just copying the American bands, they translated that physical sonic danger completely into a working-class Quebecois identity.
The messiness was the authenticity.
You nailed it.
Okay, so they dropped this absolute bombshell of an album in 1999. They completely disrupt the idea of what French rock is supposed to sound like. They build this incredible buzzing momentum, and then they just vanish.
A complete disappearing act. For 13 years.
Okay, I have to push back on this a little bit.
Oh?
Yeah, because the source material frames this 13-year disappearance as this brilliant mechanism that elevated them to mythological status.
Right, the legend of the band.
But I'm looking at this from a practical standpoint, especially compared to today's social media era, where if you don't post an update every week, you lose your audience.
That's very true today.
Right. It feels like sheer dumb luck. I mean, they didn't sit around a boardroom table and plot a 13-year marketing hiatus.
No, definitely not.
Fred Fortin just went off to do solo work. Olivier Langin focused on his other band, Galaxy. And Gros Mené simply ceased to exist. And what universe is neglecting your project for a decade? A genius strategy.
Well, you're absolutely right that it wasn't a whiteboard marketing strategy. It was just life happening.
Exactly.
But we aren't judging the intention here. We're analyzing the result. And the result defies all conventional logic because of the psychological power of scarcity.
Scarcity, like the sneaker market, where they only drop 50 pairs of a shoe.
Exactly like that. Think about the context of the era. Because they weren't constantly feeding the machine with fast, disposable updates, their 13-year gap actually stimulated the fans' imaginations in a way that modern bands simply cannot do.
Oh, because they just had the one record.
Right. Listeners had to hold tightly to that single, sweat-drenched, chaotic, physical recording from 1999. Because there was no new information coming from the band, the silence forced the music to do all the talking.
So you're saying that by completely removing themselves from the equation, they let the audience project whatever they wanted onto that one album.
Precisely. Over those 13 years, they gained a ghostly mythological status. Fans were left wondering, were they even real? Was that album just a fever dream recorded in a chalet?
Will they ever come back?
Yes. When you remove yourself from the spotlight completely, you allow the audience to build a myth around you that becomes larger than life.
They became the musical equivalent of Bigfoot.
That is a great comparison.
Just this legendary hairy beast that people swore they heard in the woods once back in 1999.
Yeah.
But, I mean, here is the problem with becoming Bigfoot. If you ever actually walk out of the woods 13 years later, you are probably going to disappoint people.
Oh, absolutely. The expectations are impossible.
It's the classic trap of the reunion tour, right? Where the band puts on their old leather jackets and suddenly realizes they just don't fit anymore.
It happens all the time.
If they try to recapture their youth, they just look sad and totally out of touch.
It is arguably the most dangerous maneuver a band can make. But Gros Mené navigated it perfectly.
How so?
Well, when they finally returned in 2012 with their second album, Agnus Dei, they didn't try to fake being 20-somethings in a chalet.
Thank goodness.
Right, and it shocked everyone. That album won the ADSQ Award, the massive industry award we talked about at the beginning for Alternative Album of the Year in 2013.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. How did they avoid the reunion trap? What actually changed in the sound?
The sound had fundamentally evolved. Fred Fortin cited Dr. John's classic album Gris Gris as a major influence for this comeback.
Oh, wow. Gris Gris.
Yeah, now, Gris Gris is a legendary record that practically invented this swampy New Orleans voodoo groove. Musically, it relies heavily on syncopation and playing behind the beat.
Playing behind the beat. So for the non-musicians out there, does that mean deliberately playing slightly late?
Yes, exactly, but with total, absolute control. It's like a heartbeat that skips slightly.
Oh, I like that description.
It creates this physical drag in the rhythm that literally forces the listener to lean into the groove. So Gros Mené took their original heavy stoner rock foundation and injected it with this humid, dragging New Orleans rhythm.
That sounds incredible.
It was heavier, it was thicker, and importantly, the musicianship was incredibly elevated.
I see. So it's like watching a seasoned Michelin star chef decide to cook a wild, rule-breaking meal.
Yes.
They are still creating chaos, but now they have the elite skills to control it. The 13 years they spent working in their other projects had sharpened their technical skills to a razor's edge.
Exactly. They leveled up while everyone thought they were gone.
But they kept the absolute weirdness because, 10 years after that comeback, we get their third album, Pax et Bonum, which was released in 2022.
Another massive gap.
Right. And true to form, it was a total surprise release. No modern single-by-single marketing drip, no viral TikTok campaigns, just boom, here's an album.
And the craziest part about Pax et Bonum is that they had been slowly working on it since 2014.
Wait, 8 years of production for a surprise drop?
Yes. And the lyrics went even further into the absurd.
Oh, yeah. This is where we get the songs about dwarf porn actors, giant hot dogs, and recycled cigarettes.
And this raises an important question, right? When you look at those lyrics, giant hot dogs and tavern humor, can sheer vulgarity and silliness be considered high art?
Well, the ADSQ voters certainly thought so back in 2013.
Exactly. What Gros Mené proved with these comeback albums is that down-market jokes and absolute absurdity hold genuine, profound musical value when they are delivered with total, uncompromising conviction.
They fully believed in what they were doing.
They did. They didn't try to artificially act young, but they also didn't become boring and corporate. They evolved into what the source material brilliantly describes as an adult roughness.
I love that concept. Adult roughness.
It's a great term.
It's just the idea that just because you have a mortgage now doesn't mean you can't shatter your eardrums in the garage.
Yes. It's the realization that getting older doesn't mean you have to smooth out all your edges. You can just become a more complex, heavier version of your rough self.
So what does this all mean? To really understand the mechanics of this adult roughness, we need to look at the architects of this chaos.
The guys in the band.
Yeah, we have to look at the actual people making the noise, because the dynamic between them is what makes this whole engine run. Let's start with the frontman, Fred Fortin.
Okay.
He was born in 1971, and by all accounts, the guy possesses incredibly high technical and songwriting skills.
He's brilliant.
But he intentionally hides those elite skills behind a really messy, human, bluesy style of playing. How does a highly skilled musician actually play messy without the song just completely falling apart?
It's harder than it looks. He has an immense amount of talent to play loosely.
Mm-hmm.
Fortin's approach is deeply rooted in the philosophy of the blues.
In what way?
Well, he doesn't want the performance to sound perfectly quantized or like it was executed by a computer. He wants you to hear the sweat, the slight hesitations, the slide of the fingers on the fretboard.
The human element.
Exactly. He builds a rock-solid musical structure, but he intentionally leaves the scaffolding looking really dangerous.
Okay, let me throw another analogy at you.
Go for it.
It's like taking a finely tuned V8 racing engine, the kind of thing built by aerospace engineers to run flawlessly,
Right.
and deliberately loosening up those specific bolts. So when you turn it on, it constantly rattles, it spits smoke, and it sounds like it is going to explode on the track in any second.
Oh, that's perfect.
It isn't actually broken, it is terrifying by design.
That is exactly it.
Yeah.
Fortin builds the V8 engine, and Olivier Langevin is the guy loosening the bolts.
I love that.
Because Langevin's guitar work adds this essential aggressive layer of noise and garage rock distortion. And what is really interesting is how this contrasts with his own main gig, the band Galaxy.
How so?
Galaxy is much more high-speed, is party-focused, driving rock. But when Langevin plays in Gros Mené, he slows everything down, thickens the mud, and just lets the distortion bleed everywhere.
So they are perfectly complementary. You have Fortin's bluesy, slightly drunken groove pulling you in, and Langevin's absolute sonic assault pushing you back.
Yes. But you cannot truly grasp the phenomenon of Gros Mené until you look at how this V8 engine operates in front of a live audience.
Because their shows are not standard concerts.
Yeah, not at all.
Right, you don't just stand there with a glass of wine and politely applaud the time signatures.
No, the source describes their live shows as being less about watching a performance and much more about participating in a communal frenzy.
A frenzy, that's a strong word.
It is a sweaty, tavern-like atmosphere. It goes back to that feeling of danger. It constantly feels like the entire show is on the absolute verge of collapsing into total disaster.
But because they are actually elite musicians, it never does.
Exactly.
And what that means for the listener standing in the crowd is that there is zero intellectual distance.
What do you mean by that?
Well, you know when you go to a really hip, sophisticated indie show in the city, and half the room is standing in the back with their arms crossed, stroking their chins, analyzing the chord progression?
Oh yeah, the posture of being too cool to care.
Exactly. Gros Mené absolutely obliterates that posture. You cannot stand in the back and analyze. You are forced into the pit, sweating with your neighbors, shouting along to a song about a giant hot dog, and just feeling that raw, physical, square wave vibration in your chest.
We connect this to the bigger picture. This live dynamic is deeply embedded in Quebec's regional festival culture.
Really? How does it fit into the broader culture?
Well, throughout the province, especially outside the major cities, there is a really strong tradition of local, community-driven musical gatherings. Gros Mené taps directly into that vein.
So they aren't aloof rock stars.
No, they don't operate like a rigid corporate walled-off band with VIP sections. They operate more like a local community project. They constantly bring in collaborators from across the scene.
Like who?
People like Francois Lafontaine on keys or Marie-Pierre Arthur. It is a collective, really. It's a family of musicians who just want to turn up their amps and play together.
It's basically an open door to the garage.
Yes. And by keeping that door open and keeping the sound deliberately unrefined, they preserve the primal danger of rock and roll.
That's a great point. Rock music was never supposed to be safe, was it?
Not at all. It wasn't supposed to be polite or perfectly aligned on a digital grid. It was supposed to feel a little bit like the wheels might fall off the car at any second. Gros Mené keeps that danger alive, and they prove that you can age into it without losing its potency.
And that brings us right back to you listening to this deep dive right now. Think about how much time we spend trying to sanitize our own lives.
Oh, constantly.
We curate our social feeds. We obsess over making our work look effortless and flawless. We edit the life out of everything we do so we don't look foolish.
We're terrified of looking messy.
We are. But the story of Gros Mené shows that true authenticity, even if it is dirty, weird, totally unpolished, and completely absurd, resonates so much deeper than calculated perfection.
It really does.
They remind us to look at our own lives and ask, are we over-polishing? Are we sanding away the exact quirks that actually make our work interesting? Because sometimes the messy, grease-stained, giant minnow version of what you do is actually the truest, most impactful version you could possibly put out into the world.
It is a really profound lesson hidden inside a very loud, fuzzy package.
It really is.
But before we wrap up, there is one more layer to this that I think is really worth mulling over.
Oh, what's that?
Well, think about this. Gros Mené built their legendary larger-than-life myth entirely because they were isolated in a specific rural region and because they vanished for 13 years in an era where you still could.
Right, before everybody had a smartphone.
Exactly. Today, we live in a hyper-connected, digitized world. Every garage band on Earth is instantly streamable, and we have instant access to everyone's behind-the-scenes reality.
We see everything all the time.
Right. It makes you wonder, has the internet completely killed our ability to build geographical myths? In an age of constant notifications and the pressure to always be visible, what part of your own life or creative process might actually benefit from a long, deliberate silence? Is it even possible to become a local Bigfoot anymore?
That is a fascinating question. If there's no silence, there's no space for the myth to grow, is there?
No space at all.
Maybe it's time we all embrace a little more silence, a little more myths. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.